WXCO 1230 AM, W255DN Wausau, streaming at bullfallsradio.com.
And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Coming up, we got a pair of guests. Our coach guest coming up at 6:20 this evening is the head girls basketball coach of Wausau East High School, Jennifer Stout. We'll be talking to her about her Lumberjacks coming up in just a few minutes. And then at about 7 o'clock this evening, our student athlete guest, Grant Kuklinski. He is a outstanding performer for the Mosinee High School hockey team. He's off to a fast start, 3 goals, 4 assists in the first 2 games of the season. So we'll talk to Grant Kuklinski coming up at 7 o'clock here on the Big High School Sports Show. It was a busy Thanksgiving weekend, wasn't it, Jeff Gress?
There was a lot of games, and even traveling around just watching family, and so you felt like I spent in the gym every time, or I turned on the radio, was listening to a hockey game, trying to learn something about hockey. Probably still didn't, but you're right. Great atmosphere and great time over the holidays with sports.
Let's jump in. Let's talk some boys basketball, because it was really the first big week in terms of a lot of activity in boys high school basketball. And start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference, because I know I saw some Valley action. I know you saw some Valley action over at East and Wisconsin Valley Conference. Let's start off with Wausau East, because they were 3-0 over the week. They beat Elko 101-35 last Friday. 5 East players in double figures, led by Charlie Caley's 22. Then on Saturday, East was victorious over 3 Lakes, 91-63. Jesse Nepgezik, 25. Caden Worth, 18. I will say that those did not impress me all that much because of the competition. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with what East did, but last night I thought was a much more impressive win. They went on the road against a Bay Conference team in New London that's expected to be in the top half of their league, and the Lumberjacks won by double figures again, 74-60. Again, good balance for East offensively. Jesse Nepgezik, 18, Brady Prohoda, 12, Jaden Garrett, and Caden Worth, 11 each. So, again, I thought that win last night kind of gave me a little bit more of a feel. But obviously, you schedule the way you schedule. I thought the first 2 games are against teams that they should beat, and they did, and they're 3-0 to start.
Yeah, and, hitting the scheduling, it's tough because sometimes, teams bail on you, teams don't show up,
right. Teams
break contract for whatever reason when they owe you an extra year of a home and away game. So it's tough to always get the competition you're looking for, and coaches have different philosophies on why they enter into certain games. The thing I think for East in the early season with this 3-0 start is solidification is just the balanced attack. Mm-hmm. The junior and senior class blend well. Those kids have logged a lot of minutes. They've put a lot of time in on the basketball floor. They've got height. They've got smart, intelligent play out of their guards. They've got scoring aspects. And the games that I watched, they're able to create a lot of defensive pressure. Mm-hmm. And I think, those things are going to go a long way, not only in their conference season, but I think you hit it on the head. The first 2 games, you expected them to, mic adjustment there, you expected them to win those first 2. The third one was a little bit more of a challenging game and went on the road and knocked it up with a 14-point win, which is good balanced basketball. So for them, off to a great start and solidifying themselves early on as a team to watch.
Wausau West went 2-1. They had 3 blowouts. And again, they're in their turkey shoot. I think won the games they expected to win, beating Crandon 73-41 Friday. Brett Butala 13, Griffin Lang 11, Cargie Cooper 10. Then on Saturday, championship round, Warriors defeated Northern Pines 62-30. Butala 20, Lucas Hager 13. And then they got a step up in competition last night. And according to Mark Miller in the Wisconsin Basketball Yearbook, Appleton North, a very talented team, maybe a bit of a young team, but boy, you don't see it very often when Wausau West gives up more than 40 points in back-to-back halves, and they lost at home 84-55 last night. So, again, early in the season, you find out a lot about your team. I think they found out. I was impressed with how they played on Saturday against Pines, and I was a little surprised that Appleton North came into the field house last night and won by such a margin because we're so used to seeing the Warriors be able to clamp down defensively.
Right, and just the grittiness that they always have, seeing them play just for a little bit on both nights after watching the Newman games prior to that, you see the self-determination that's on the defensive squads. Just Coach Lemons always has them prepared on that side, and that's always a big deal for them, is how they're going to come out and really not give up a lot. They're going to stick you in that. Their defensive strides are going to turn into transition offense and keep them in the game. So, solid 2-0 start with beating Crandon and beating Northland Pines, and their kids got after with great effort. I got to talk to Coach Lemons just for a brief minute walking up in the stands when he was giving my son and myself a hard time. So he shared that, he was pleased with how they played, but he also mentioned at that point in the conversation, because they hadn't played Appleton North yet, that was going to be a step up. He knew it was coming, and obviously a challenging game early on.
And also something he told me in the pregame on Saturday is that they're changing defense a little bit. They're doing things differently on the defensive end, and obviously when you do make changes, sometimes there's some bumps in the road, and I think it's a good thing prior to starting the conference campaign to play some good competition and maybe learn a hard lesson or two. You've been there before. I mean, you can't just go out there and play a bunch of people you're going to beat all the time. You have to find out a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'd love to meet the perfect coaching world where you sketch something out and it happens exactly the way it does. I mean, it's moments of trial and error. And in Coach Lemons, he's differing his system up a little bit, bringing some variety to the game. But I think it's valid that you try it now to see what strengths are there and what improvements are needed.
DC Everest played 3 games as well. They had a couple of games over at their event at DC East Friday and Saturday. On Friday, fell to Superior, a solid basketball team, 64-59. Cohen Preby had 19 points. Cade Felch, 12. Casey Studeman, 12 points, 10 rebounds. Bounced back with a nice win against Eau Claire North on Saturday, 61-59. Preby again. I think it's something that we're going to see a lot during the winter. A very good score. Cohen Preby, 21 points. Studeman, another double-double. 14 points, 11 rebounds. Colin Ebersold had 13 points. And then on Monday, 3 games in 4 days, and went over to Ashwaubenon and ran into a pretty good Jaguar squad. 81-60 Ashwaubenon. Studeman 17, Preby 16, Ebersold 10. So 1 win, 2 losses for DC Everest. But I think those 3 teams, pretty good competition for Everest.
Well, right. And they're challenging themselves right away in the field to get ready for their conference schedule. I mean, that's going to be in and of itself challenges enough playing against Spashes, Marshfields, the East, the West of the world in that conference, in the Merrills. And you get a lot of good games just set up naturally there. So I think if you can get outside, jump against some teams in some different areas, you can test the waters and start to evaluate your team. But the players you listed, that's where the production's going to come. Oliver Drake's in his second year. So the nice part will be in your second year, you'll learn a lot from that first year and set the foundation of which systems you think are going to rise up to occasion in terms of your offenses and defenses.
We saw it with East, and I think we saw it with Everest as well. It's always a very big positive when you have multiple double-digit scores. And I think for Everest, obviously you have to replace a lot of offense with Hall's graduation. But, boy, I mean, to have 3 at least, and then in the case of East, even more than that at times, that's a good early sign, isn't it?
Yeah, well, as a coach, you think you think you have what's going to show up. You know your team. You've seen them in the summer. You've been around the kids from one year to the next, so you know what you have there. But it's nice to see the proof and that it prevails the way it should. And checking stats, that when I'm getting ready for the show, that is one thing I'm noticing a lot. There are multiple guys scoring some high valued points in these early games versus times when you used to see one person kind of gutting it out and being the main person, and then a couple supporting cats that are hitting 7, 8, 9 points. So a lot of point production early on in these early games before conference season.
Merrill got underway last night, and they you're going to play a lot of games between now and the end of the season, and I doubt they will have a much more exciting finish than they had last night in their opener. They went to Shawano and were down with 5 seconds to go, inbounded it, got about a 28-footer from the right-hand side from E.J. Wykes that hit nothing but the bottom of the net. So obviously, instead of a tough loss and a tough bus ride home to Merrill, the Merrill Blue Jays defeated Shawano 70-68, and Wykes finished up a big night with that 3-pointer and 24 points. Sam Ryman 17, Carter Body 14 for Merrill. I mean, talk about a nice way to start, a nice way to get some energy, some juice, to win a big road game like that, and in walk-off fashion. Just very impressive.
Well, and with not, looking at some of these teams, they have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 games in already throughout the Thanksgiving. If they played one early and played a couple and then hit a Monday, Tuesday already, they can have a handful of games. And for Merrill, just one game already. Well, their first game was now this Tuesday night, and I think it's telling when you can squeak those close ones out. You can really put some desire and some commitment into your team that, look, we've been battle tested already in the first game. You could just keep building on that. So, even as much as you can in a 2-point loss to learn from. So just a lot that you can see from your team, and it's always great when you win in that exciting fashion.
Stevens Point looks like they will be a handful this year. They had a couple of nice wins. They started off going to Bayport, winning 73-55. Grand Chaudonneau 26. Jaron Suez had 15. And then last night, another win, 55-47 over Nina. Chaudonneau 16. Early on, it just feels like Stevens Point is going to be a team that right now is the team to beat in the Valley.
And they're stretching out the factor of getting some of those teams over on the eastern side of the state. I mean, right away, I felt that Bayport score would have been a little closer. So hats off to Spash with beating them almost by 20. And then, to go back and play competitively against Nina, who's, always hanging around there and giving the Valley a harder time in terms of what they're able to do when they come over and play them in the playoffs. A nice win on Tuesday versus Nina. So they have a lot of point production. They have a lot of athleticism, and it looks like, having the player back from injury, another kid coming in the program through a transfer is really paying off and starting to gel right away.
And Marshfield also got a win against a Fox Valley team as they went to Appleton East last evening and defeated Appleton East 52-51. Brooks Hinton, a terrific multi-sport athlete, 15 points. Ethan Connect, 13 for Marshfield. And Marshfield will be around. And again, you like to see that. I mean, Appleton East, I'm not sure whether or not they're going to be at the top of that conference or not, and probably not, but they've had some good teams, and it's always good to beat those Fox Valley teams if you're from the Wisconsin Valley Conference.
Well, yeah, especially as that gets closer to playoff time. It just, they get pitted against each other, and seeds get knocked around that way. So, again, they want to, it was a tight, 1-point game for the win for Marshfield. So I just really think that in the moment, those are challenging games to be in. A lot of pressure on the players, a lot of maybe anxiety for the coach being in that moment. But at the end of the day, when you can pull them out and be ahead of that really gives you some fuel to the fire to start the season off.
And a new era for Wisconsin Rapids. They went 1-2 in the past week. One thing that you jump out about Wisconsin Rapids, a lot of three-pointers. They had 16 triples as a team in their opener, beating Ellsworth 70-57. Trade and Clary actually led the team in all 3 of these games. He had 20 in that one. Then the Red Raiders lost to Milwaukee Academy of Science 96-57, but 11 threes. Clary 21 points. And then last night, lost to Holman, 68-59, and Clary had 20 points. But I talked to somebody that sees Wisconsin Rapids on a somewhat regular basis last night when I was in Rapids for the hockey game, and apparently it's going to be a very high tempo. You're going to see a lot of three-pointers and try to play some fun basketball.
Well, and consistently hitting about, average about 65 points a game and getting up and down the floor. That's going to be some high octane offense that their coach is trying to provide for them. So I think it lies in the stats when you say there's going to be a lot of 3-point shooting, because you can see with teams making that, 15 plus in the games is a lot of 3-pointers.
Great Northern Conference, looking at the Mosinee Indians specifically, as they, I think, are expected to be another very solid team here in central Wisconsin. And Mosinee had a couple of games Friday and Saturday. They beat Kingdom Prep Lutheran 82-43. Keegan Jersley, 28 points. Garrett Shoup, 16. Landon Tomer scored 16 points, pulled down 19 rebounds. And then Saturday, a good win for Mosinee, 78-61 over New London. Tomer, monster night, 23 points, 15 rebounds. Aiden Shaughnessy, 17. Jersley, 16. This is, again, a Mosinee team that's been very successful in recent years, and they got, again, multiple kids that are able to provide some either scoring or bringing down the boards.
Well, and it makes it so dangerous when you have that. I talked to somebody that saw some of their games. They mentioned they should have beat Kingdom Prep. They were the better team out there. But, they turned around, they played New London again, which is, we've talked about a good basketball team that comes around here and plays some of our local teams, and a significant win against them. And I think the biggest thing, that you just mentioned is there's balance. There's balance in those statistics. The same person's not on the top of the scoring or the rebounding, and that makes you dangerous, and it's difficult for opposing coaches to prepare for that.
Merriwood South, let's start with the preseason favorite, Marathon. Every year, they're one of the last teams in the state to play their first game, and they played their first game last night. They went to Spencer, 177-32. Grant Warren 18, Truthers 15, Tyler Underwood 14. And again, we're going to have to see, I think, a lot more, but those are kids that have been producers. It's a program that seems to produce all the time. And when you look at that conference, right now the target's on Marathon.
Oh, definitely. And I think they'll be able to, they're going to uphold their target too. I mean, they're going to come defend that with a lot of will and strength and basketball skills that they have on that team. Obviously, that was kind of what we talked about before. Warren's on that team, but, not everything has to be him. He's unselfish. He does a lot for the team, but there's a good supporting cast there. And I know they even, last year, some of the guys coming off the bench were freshmen, and now they're sophomores playing in the rotation regularly again. So, or maybe starting. I don't know their exact starting lineup. So, that win against Spencer is obviously what you'd expect to happen with a very good Marathon team that they have, and they're going to hold that spot at the top of that conference, in defending that title.
It's a new Newman Catholic team. Obviously, won a state championship last spring, Division 5, but lost all their starters, basically lost all their production, and knew there might be some bumps. There were some bumps on Friday when they fell to Pines 37-22. Only scored 7 points in the second half, did not score a point, I think, for the last 11 or 12 minutes of the game. But then on Saturday, I thought played very well. I did not see the game against Pines on Friday, but did the game on Saturday against Crandon, where they won 65-58. Lucas Piffner, 23, Quincy Fender, 16, Liam McCarty, 15. And frankly, based on what I saw on Saturday, I'm surprised they lost to Pines, because I thought they did do a lot of good things on Saturday. And that, obviously, with a lot of inexperienced players, you like to see where they took some of the lessons perhaps on Friday and turned it into, I thought, a very solid performance in a game where they a number of times Crandon would cut the lead to 1, but Newman would always have a response, and I thought a very impressive win.
Well, and that's one of the things I ran, obviously working up at Newman, ran into Coach Waldvogel yesterday after our youth game or middle school game, and we were talking a little bit about just the growth from one. They're young. They got a lot of sophomores that are their major contributors, and it's the youth that's going to do most of the stuff offensively and defensively for that team, just because those are the guys that they're going to lean upon a little bit based on what they can do out on the floor. And I thought from watching them against Pines, it's going to hurt you the minute you can't put the ball in the basket, but you get good looks and you just can't throw it in, because they had good looks. And that's what happened in those scoring droughts. They're getting good shots. They weren't forces. They weren't bad choices. They just didn't fall. And when those shots fell against Crandon, you saw that, because they always had to come back and run something off a screen, and somebody's able to get set up and drill the shot. And so that's growth. If I'm coaching, that's growth from one game to the next with that youth, is just playing with a little more confidence the next night and get a feel for it in obviously a much bigger gym than they practice in. So it's going to be a little different.
Always tough, Merriwood South, and I thought last night we saw again why this year it should be very tough again. Mentioned Marathon won last night. Stratford beat Neelsville. Always a big matchup. Neelsville always solid. Stratford beat Neelsville 43-41. Drew Brusowitz 13. Henry Zaleski 12. And Auburndale, which is always strong, beat Colby 60-44. Caden Weinferder 18. Caden Anderson 13. Blake Robb 11. So again, you have Marathon. I think you're going to have Stratford again. And then Auburndale's always there, and they've always been a thorn in the side of Marathon, including that playoff game last year. But last night, a very impressive night for the Merriwood South.
Yeah, Coach Schmidt over at Stratford, his teams are always going to grit it out depending on how successful they already are offensively or offensively, because they're going to play tough defensively and they're going to stick it to you, not give you easy looks on that end. So him in close games, they're going to be well prepared, and I'm not surprised they pulled that one out by 2. For Auburndale, went over to Colby, who's had some skilled athletes. Those guys play hard. They've had some back and forth games, and they went out and got their first one with other than he has his son back on the team, but there were some other guys that are stepping into new roles. So those couple teams right there, along with Edgar, looking to be up in that upper pack and fighting for things against the top of the conference with Marathon.
And Merriwood North, Athens last night, a 46-43 win over Loyal. Balance, 4 players between 10 and 11 points for Athens. Also last night, winners from the Merriwood North, Prentice beating Flambeau 70-58. Rib Lake beat Northern Pines 54-23. Abbotsford fell by 2 to Cadott 54-52. But again, for Athens, they've had some really good teams in recent years, and looks like some balance, at least very, very early.
Right. And, Athens just kind of building on the success they've had. And it's going to be interesting to see how they do, because they had some young players coming in off the bench with those seniors that just graduated. And it looks like, they're hitting the road hard. A couple of those young players were in the stat category leading them in scoring last night. I thought the Rib Lake game was, that score was impressive because I've already seen Pines play. And so, that could be a team to watch to see how they finish out at the top of that conference.
And finally, CWC North. We had a chance to talk a little bit about Northern Lutheran last week with our player guest, and looking forward to that opener. Probably didn't quite look for it, but Alman Bancroft has a lot of good athletes. Obviously, they had a very good football season, and obviously that means there's probably a good group of boys that are involved in athletics. And Alman Bancroft beat Northern Lutheran 87-39. And so often we see some of these CWC North teams struggle a little bit outside of the conference to try and toughen themselves up for when the conference does get underway.
Right, and obviously, not a score you want to finish with, but you're playing a good basketball team. You take back from how that game went, and you look at and last week, our Northern Lutheran guest alluded to just that they're kind of putting things back together. They had a couple key injuries. The Wisconsin Valley Lutheran kids come over, so they're trying to bridge that gap. But they always do well within that conference. So the outside the conference strength of schedule is a big deal to toughen them up for that.
And finally, CWC East Wittenberg-Bernewood fell to Pulaski in overtime, 51-48. It's good to play tough games early, isn't it? To be put in pressure situations, to get your toes in the water very quickly. And then you play an overtime game, obviously. You learn a lot of lessons you don't get on the practice court, do you?
No, and that's a very positive way to look at it. Because sometimes coaches are coming out of there thinking, if we would have just made these 3 less mistakes, we would have won this game. Or
one less mistake in the overtime game.
Yeah, well, we turned it over. We didn't make free throws, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, after you get into a couple more games and you feel better about how your team's doing because you've gotten the practice time and got back on the floor to challenge yourself again, that game will be a big deal because it did toughen you up and it made a difference in how you're going to do throughout the season. But in living in the moment, it can be a little bit challenging. But nonetheless, good game to have right away.
So that's a look at what's been going on in boys high school basketball. We'll look ahead at some conference games and really get into the flow of the season later in the program. But coming up next, we'll have our first guest of the evening, our coach guest this week, the Wausau East Lumberjack girls basketball head coach, Jennifer Stout. She'll be coming up next as we continue here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230.
For more than 60 years, Sun Printing has been Central Wisconsin's commercial printer of choice due to their commitment to quality, creative solutions, and dedicated service. Sun Printing's team offers you a wide spectrum of services, whether you need vehicle graphics, offset, digital, large format, graphic design, or mailing. They print everything under the sun. No project is too big or too small, so give Sun Printing a call at 845-4911 or visit them online at sunprinting.com.
If you're looking for your next ride, check out Menke GMC in Schofield. Formerly Fred Miller Automotive, Menke GMC serves Schofield, Wausau, Marshfield, and Stevens Point with a huge selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. Explore a range of top-notch SUVs like Acadia, Terrain, and Yukon, or choose from the rugged Sierra truck lineup, or even a certified pre-owned vehicle. No matter your dream vehicle awaits at Menke GMC, 448 Grand Avenue in Schofield, and online at menkeauto.com. Menke GMC in Schofield, where your journey begins.
On Thursday night, the Central Wisconsin Storm girls hockey team looked for a third straight win to start off the season, traveling to Medford to take on the Raiders. Hear all the exciting action on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app, with the opening face-off set for 5 p.m. Central Wisconsin Storm hockey on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230 is brought to you by the Cloverbelt Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurants, Sun Printing, Graphic Packaging International, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Menke Automotive, and Shine Chiropractic. It's Central Wisconsin Storm Hockey at Medford, Thursday, starting at 5 p.m. on your home for high school sports. Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. And on the Civic Media app. Along with Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, in time for our first guest of the evening. As every week at this time, we have one of our area high school head coaches join us. And tonight, from Wausau East High School, the head girls basketball coach of the Lumberjacks, Jennifer Stout. And Coach, first of all, thank you for coming on over.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm having you a little bit closer to that.
Closer. Okay.
Exactly right. We're going to make you a pro here doing these interviews very quickly. But first of all, I know that it's very early in the season, but a couple of W's for your team. You've actually been a pretty active team. I think, 5 games, if I'm not mistaken? 5 games so far this season. A couple of W's. Had the tournament over at DC Everest. Faced a New London squad last night. Before we start to really delve into your team, I guess, first impressions since you started practice and the early part of the season, how has it been going? Have you got what you have expected so far?
Yes, I would have to say. The past couple seasons... I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
The past couple seasons, it was almost like they were afraid to shoot the ball. So that was our biggest struggle to start out with, just telling everyone, you have the green light to shoot, you know. So that's been our biggest struggle, just looking to score, looking inside to post play. And I've seen them improve as we go on. So that's been huge for us, regardless of who we play. They're shooting the ball, which is all I ask, you know, of them right now.
Well, and how hard is it? And I remember just when I coached, either whether I was just starting and I took it over from another coach, or even when you get different players through graduation and you know, just getting the culture you want from and how much you learn from one year to the next. You know, kind of I guess for you, what is the other than just getting them to shoot, you know, what is the foundation or the pillars you want to set in there, so when girls just keep coming up, this is either kind of our staple, this is who we are, this is the identity I want you guys to have.
Yeah. Our biggest thing is defense, just to be as aggressive as you can, have active hands. When I first came into the program, the girls that I'm coaching now, the coach before me had very set plays. You know, there was 8 set plays for offense, for defense. And not that one way's better than the other, but then I come in, just play. Run a motion offense, cut screen, and they couldn't do it. You know, because that's not what they were used to. So it was coming in and trying to get that mentality of you have the freedom to play, to go out, and it's not going to be held against you if you make a mistake. So a lot of it with them was mental. So that's what I'm trying to build on each year, is that confidence. And even when it comes with scheduling, you know, you want to get some teams that you know you can compete with, and then of course you run into the Shawnos and Lakelands, but you also need those too. You know, you need those games to see where you're at, and things that you have to improve on. So my biggest thing looking forward is be aggressive and smart, and be able to just play.
One of the aspects I think folks also don't realize is it's more than just a varsity program. You have to build the entire program, because otherwise you're not going to have kids who are ready to play varsity basketball. It's important to have JV. It's important to have middle school programs, even, you know, youth programs. As part of this job, how big has that been in terms of trying to build the program maybe from the bottom up, to try to know that, hey, there's not going to be a quick fix here. In order to be a successful program, you have to have girls that are coming through the program and develop depth. I imagine at East that's probably one of the biggest challenges.
Oh, it's a huge struggle. Prior to me coming in, there was not a lot of communication between the youth programs or the youth teams and varsity. So if you do, have 2 or 3 years of that, your program is just dwindling and dwindling, because you don't have that connection with the younger players, and that's your future. So we've started, we're having youth nights. We're going and having them practice with us. We're going to their practices and going to their games, because you have to build. We had, and a perfect example of that is our numbers. We had 22 girls come out. I mean, just that alone is a struggle, especially in the conference. And that includes 3 freshmen. I mean, so then that gives you a picture of what's coming. We have to go down. We have to build those youth programs. Like I said, it's our future. So that's one thing we've really been pushing, and we've really been in communication. I have Teresa Whetstone. She's amazing. She's helping with the youth programs, the travel teams. So we're getting all of those things set into place. So you know what's coming. But an East has always been historically struggling. Just it is what it is. But if you don't go down to those levels and start building up, it will never change. It will never change. So we're looking at probably the next 2 years of just not having the numbers that we really need to compete in the Wisconsin Valley Conference. And that's what's difficult. It's very difficult.
Well, and you guys are both jumping into the things I was going to go to with numbers and how you build the youth program. But it's across the board. So many teams, can barely function, can't get a JV team.
Yeah.
So they're playing with just enough varsity kids. And you dive down in those youth levels and you're still just trying to stay active because basketball's such a long season. Kids sometimes want out. They don't want to do it that long. So I also think that a big deal comes from how you can present that varsity program. If we just get some of those W's, knock out some of those close ones, have these kids watching the battle and the fight. So, looking at your team right now, what do you like that they're doing? What do you want to keep improving on? And maybe, some things about share some of your players that are on your team for the listeners that don't get to see East basketball games.
One thing about my team is there's just no quitting them. There is hustle. They're going everywhere. And the biggest thing was you're hustling, but for what purpose? Where are you going? What are you doing? And taking that hustle and directing them in the right direction with it. But regardless if we're up by 20 or down by 40, they will never quit. So to have that mentality is wonderful because you can't coach that.
Right.
They either have it or they don't. They have that competitive spirit or they don't. So that's one thing that I'm very impressed with. Sydney Crawford put a ton of work in the off season. Struggled freshman, sophomore year, and kind of went back and forth between JV and varsity and didn't really have a home. So in the off season, she put in so much work and she's just a powerhouse this year from the outside. So it's really neat to see that. We have 7 seniors. So, and they've played together throughout the years. But like I said, once they got to East, it was kind of this, instead of keeping that group together, they separated or they pulled one and pulled two instead of you keep those girls together and you build together. And that never happened. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Right.
Like I said, and with volleyball, I coach volleyball. So there's 70 girls that come out because it's volleyball. And then when you got to work a little harder in basketball, you don't have those numbers that you want. So trying to take what you have and build with that, that's one thing I'm looking forward to because the girls on our team, like I said, they go hard, but they're also just a great group of girls. They bring anyone in and they work with them. And even, like I said, the younger kids. So that's one thing I'm really impressed with right now.
Again, we're talking to Jennifer Stout, the head girls basketball coach at Wausau East High School here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. You mentioned Sydney Crawford's jump in terms of production, and it'd be 25 points, I think, last night against New London. She had, I think, 18 against Newman in your win on Saturday. What specifically has she done better?
Just the work in the off season and her confidence. She didn't get a lot of playing time her sophomore year or her junior year, or would take a couple shots and miss and be pulled. So there was that confidence of, if I make a mistake, I'm not going to get back out there. And we're just like, shoot the ball. Shoot the ball, Sid. So she put in the work in the off season. Now she's coming out. That confidence is there. She's not afraid to shoot. She had 25 points and I believe 14 rebounds. So double, and you can just see it in that tournament that we played at Everest. She was the bubbler player of the game. So she needs those things to keep that confidence up and to keep going. And she's also a great team player. The shot's not there, she kicks it out. So that's nice to have. She's a great team leader.
You mentioned scheduling before too, and I know coaches all have different philosophies, like getting this over the holidays, not getting anything, and some is set by the way the conference is aligned too. And one thing I always know about the Valley girls and the Valley boys is that conference schedule is you get a lot of games before that. If you had your choice, do you like that? Would you rather dive into some of those conference games? Is it a nice kind of warm up? And I guess how much, I know sometimes coaches get all hands on in that schedule, and sometimes they got to duke it out to get what they want in terms of the games. Do you get what you want out of your scheduling, and do you like the way the conference starts off a little later and leads into that play? Because that's when everybody's busting each other's chops anyways, right?
No, I like how it is right now. We need to schedule, and I don't want to say easy games because there's not any easy games, especially when we've struggled as long as we have. But you need some that you have a shot, you're going to be in there and you can compete. And you also need the Lakelands and the Shawnos, So I think it is great to be able to have some of those preseason games. And it also gives you an idea of where we sit, what do we need to work on. So I do enjoy having those prior to conference.
Let's talk about, between the line between success in terms of wins and losses. Because let's take the two games on the weekend. You had the Friday game against Gresham, 9 o'clock in the morning was a wonderful way to start right after Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
And then
I found we're not a morning team.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because then you had Newman Catholic on Saturday, and you were able to get a nice W where 4 girls were in double figures.
Yep.
What was the difference? What is the difference for Wausau East right now when you're able to win a basketball game such as Saturday as opposed to lose a basketball game on Friday?
Turnovers, definitely. Our turnovers, one game we had 30, the next game we had 26. You're not just going to win a ball game with 30 turnovers and 26. We beat Newman, but we also missed 17 free throws. You're also not, that's a miracle. Honestly. So those are the things that we see. Okay. We work on free throws all the time, but we're going to work a little bit harder, So as far as that goes, I was happy with how they played. Gresham, I felt that we should have had, but once again, when you have turnovers like that, you're handing over the ball, and so there's a lot of things that we have to clean up on our side. Teams that are beatable, that you.
And I mentioned four double-digit scores. I don't recall too many times where East has had 4 double-digit scores. Again, the offense has been a struggle. Besides Sydney Crawford, who are some of the other girls that are starting to step up because, again, and we were saying off the air, I think it's just, you can do everything right, but if you don't put it in the hole, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can do everything right, and if you don't put it in the hole, it's still not going to ultimately lead to the success. And it looks like you got some girls that are able to put it into the hole. So who are some of those other girls?
Well, our biggest thing was recognizing that post play is a must, and you're not going to get those outside shots if you don't feed the ball and get it kicked back out. Right. So that was one of our biggest things. Sydney, like I said, always. Oli, she's also a senior. Liz Gravemaid, she's doing well.
I gotta ask you real
Cushman.
fast. That name, I just see it written down, and knowing that I'm going to be doing. When you play West.
Right.
What is that name? Tell us again. That full name.
Oli Litz Gravemaid.
Very good.
And when I first started, it was Ollie, and she's like, everyone calls me Ollie. So just as far as our seniors go, Geneva Micklig, Oli, she's another great shooter from the outside. And she, they know they just have the green light. We have to, if you're not going to shoot, we're not going to score and we're not going to win, So that's our biggest thing is to stop that hesitation. There'll be times that they get the ball wide open at the top, some players, and just stand there and what do you shoot? Shoot the ball. So Claire Cushman for us, another senior, not afraid to drive, and that's what we needed. Because, like I said, when I first started, there was a lot of holding the ball, passing around the outside. You're not going to get any wins out of that. So now they're coming along, they're getting better, they're understanding, when you have that advantage, you've got to go. You can't hesitate. Sure. So now we're not seeing a lot of that hesitation anymore. You have Sydney from the outside, Oli from the outside, Grayson Berger, who also just hustles amazing on defense, not afraid to shoot. So that's our biggest improvement, I think, is just knowing that they have that confidence and they know that we've given them that, the freedom of let it fly because that's what we need. So definitely great senior class.
And how important is that going to be going into everybody's conference is a dogfight.
Definitely.
You get in there and it's sometimes not. Are you guys bigger or smaller than Merrill? In terms of population,
man, I think we're
pretty close, right?
Close.
But so you're one of the smaller schools, if not the smallest in that conference, which is never easy either. Because number-wise, you should have so many more players to choose from.
Well, and that's
based on that, which makes it tougher. So approaching that, that conference, I guess looking at the conference from your standpoint, what are going to be some battles? What are going to be some games that maybe you think we got to get after?
They're all going to be battles. They really are. They're all going to be battles.
Or maybe teams your girls even look forward to playing, or you look forward to playing as a coach because it's just a good rivalry game.
Yeah, Everest. I think that'll be a good game. I also, Marshfield's always tough, Point's always tough, but once again, you watch film and see what they have, and in your mind at the same time, you're like, okay, we match up well here, we match up well, and it just depends on, like I said, those turnovers. I mean, that's what it comes down to for us is cleaning up our game, and I feel I honestly do that we can compete with anyone once we have our post play where we need it to be. You just cannot live and die by the 3 in the Wisconsin Valley Conference. Right. You have to have that post play. So as that improves, I'm looking forward to several games. There's not Marshfield is one that we've always struggled with. Well, we've struggled throughout the years, but as far as this year goes, they're starting to play smarter. And that's one thing that I'm pretty excited about.
Speaking of excitement, one of the aspects I think in terms of growing a program is to have that little sense of excitement around it, that you're going in the right direction, that maybe there's a sense of stability with the program. Because I think one of the issues that we've seen at East, and I think not just girls basketball, but I think a lot of sports is you always have change. There's always a lot of change within coaches and the such, and that takes away the connecting in the off season, because if you don't have a coach for a number of months, you lose that. Do you have a sense that there is starting to build a little bit more excitement just based on, number one, having a little bit of success here early, and also number two, having maybe a little bit of stability here hopefully with yourself and the people that you work with?
Oh, definitely. We same coaching staff as last year, so that's nice, and it'll look the same next year. My sons are actually my assistant coaches, which is nice because I coach them, all the way through. So you have that same mentality. Our JV coaches are just phenomenal, and they're perfect at that level. So they keep it fun. They work them hard, because with our numbers. It's one of those things.
Right.
You can get on them and go as hard as you want, but how many are you going to lose? And then do you have a team? So that's one thing that we struggle with numbers. But as far as having a coaching staff that's consistent, has the same mindset, it really, I think, builds that excitement with the players. They come in and they know what to expect. They know what we want. And not having, this year there's somebody new coming in as an assistant or as a new head. That's hard. That's hard. And every coach that comes in has a different mentality. They, what they want to run, what they want to do, and then you're walking in with a different one and having to change that. And I think that's been the most difficult as far as stepping in that role, only being my second year. But my first year was very difficult, very difficult to try and change the mindset.
Well, and how nice has the second year been? Because the first year, I imagine it's about building, like you said, building relationships, getting some consistency, laying the groundwork, and then you fill that up with as much, things you want to improve on or as much strengths you want to build on. From first to second year, how much have you liked about that change?
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. You get to know the girls so much better, their strengths, their weaknesses. Even, and I always go back to mentality because it just comes down to that, having that confidence after years and years of just devastating losses. After a while, that confidence and the belief that you can win just dwindles and dwindles. My first year I came in, I was coaching JV, and I believe the varsity program hadn't won a conference game in 160 games or something. Don't quote me on that number, but
Close to a decade.
It's been a while.
It
was a while. Yeah. And then won one. Last season we won two. So those, that might not seem like a great accomplishment to most, but for the program, when you get a couple successes like that, then you start to build on that confidence. And walking in this season, the girls know what to expect from us, what we expect from them, and it's just you have those connections, and man, does that go a long way. Because they start to trust in you, and belief in what you're bringing to them is huge. They have to believe in you, and they have to have that buy-in. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. So,
Green Bay East on Saturday, right?
Yep.
And then the conference starts following Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, against Stevens Point. Fun always.
Yep.
But I imagine that Saturday is kind of significant. I know it's part of a doubleheader over at East, so it's a good opportunity maybe to showcase your girls to everybody. And I imagine you want to get a W going into that conference opener.
Oh, definitely. Just to get their confidence up. We're very excited. Any game that comes, And our biggest thing, too, is our girls would talk about players from other teams. like, oh, they have this person and this. I go, I won't allow it. I go, you respect them, you don't idolize them, and you have to have that confidence going in. So we look at who are the threats, and now we move on and talk about each other, how good you are, how good, So that kind of mentality and those conversations really help.
Are those a cool? I mean, how many girl-boy doubleheaders do you have throughout the city? Do you have?
I believe
a
we have
handful?
3. I know Green Bay East. I know Merrill. I believe is coming up as a doubleheader.
I think there's isn't
might
there a
be
West?
one more.
I think a West
doubleheader as
believe
well.
there is.
Yeah.
Well, and I asked because I know when I was coaching at Newman that we were trying to push for that because we thought it'd be such a cool environment to have both teams in the lower levels too all playing on the same day or same night or same time area or the same area, and it didn't work out. And I just think that would be it's got to be a great environment.
It's
and
great.
Whether you're first or second, it doesn't matter. It just gets the community to get together from that school so well, I think.
I love it. And when the boys don't have a game, they come to our games to support us. When we don't, we go to theirs. I mean, it's just neat to have that bond, and you start to build a program that way, and it's just great to have that. I love the double headers. It's fun.
Terrific. Well, congrats on the wins so far.
Thank you.
Best of luck as you get into the WVC and continue to build the Lumberjack girls basketball program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Jennifer Stout, head girls basketball coach of Wausau East. We're going to come back, talk a little girls basketball coming up next here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230.
The first WSN basketball coaches polls of the season are out for boys and girls hoops. I'm Travis Wilson, and this is a WisSports.net Minute brought to you by NFHSNetwork.com. More high school sports news after this.
Do you ever wish you could be in 2 places at once? With homework, carpool, practice, and everything else, sometimes you just can't make it to every game. But the NFHS Network's streaming platform makes that a little easier. For just $11.99 a month, you can watch unlimited high school sports live and on demand, at home or on the go. You can watch online or on one of our mobile or connected TV apps. Visit NFHSNetwork.com and subscribe today to never miss another game.
More than 300 boys and girls basketball games were contested around the state on Tuesday night, but earlier that day, the first WisSports.net coaches polls were released for boys and girls hoops. No surprise at the top in Division I on the boys' side, where defending champion De Pere occupies the top spot, led by junior Badgers commit Zach Kinziger, as well as 6'8 senior Northern Iowa commit Will Hornseth. Three-time defending D2 state champion Pewaukee sits atop the division once again to open the new year, though rival Wisconsin Lutheran is right behind. Milwaukee Academy of Science has some elite talent, especially in the junior class, and the Novas begin the year as the top-ranked squad in Division III. The voting was close, but Darlington got the edge for the top spot in the Division IV coaches poll. Solon Springs is the top-ranked Division V squad. On the girls' side, Neenah is off to a 4-0 start to the season and earns the number 1 spot in Division I. With some impressive early wins, Pewaukee opens as the top team in Division II. Waupun fell to Verona over the weekend, but the Warriors are the number 1 team in D3. It's a crowded field in Division IV, where last year's champion Laconia starts in the top spot. The defending Division V state champion McDonald Central moves up to D4 this season and is second. Assumption earns the top spot in Division V. This has been a WisSports.net Minute. Check us out online at WisSports.net.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXEO. Thanks again to Wausau East girls basketball coach Jennifer Stout for joining us. Coming up at 7 o'clock, we'll have our student-athlete guest for this week from Mosinee High School and their hockey team, Grant Kuklinski. And let's talk about girls basketball. Let's start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. Had a chance to see a number of those teams over at the Kislow at DC Everest. East was over there. Wausau West was over there. DC Everest was over there. In fact, those 3 Wisconsin Valley Conference teams are all 1-1. On Friday, in the 9 o'clock game. Again, that's bright and early on the day after Thanksgiving, but Gresham defeated East, but then East bounced back to defeat Newman Catholic 61-52 on Saturday with, again, 4 girls in double figures, led by Sydney Crawford with 18. Lily Shields had 14 for Newman. Then you had Wausau West, who defeated Newman on Friday, 51-35, and then came back and fell to Mosinee 62-52 on Saturday. And for West, I think we're seeing right now that the Warriors' bigs are the ones that are going to kind of carry them, both on Friday and Saturday. Harper Mead at 21 on Friday, Kelly Cray 15 on Friday, and then Cray at 22 points, 15 rebounds against Mosinee. Mead had 18. And then DC Everest, they lost to an always tough Regis squad, 68-22 on Friday, but then bounced back and beat a pretty good Rhinelander team in overtime on Saturday, 66-62. And Kirsten Hall, those Halls just keep racking up the points. She had 34 points, 10 rebounds for DCE. But I guess you can look at it. All those were half full, glass half fulls for all three of those Valley teams on the girls' side over the weekend.
Yeah, well, first off, what a great environment tournament for a good cause, for a guy that gave a lot of his time to not only some school districts but also officiating in that tournament to honor him and help his family is just, I think, a great cause. But a ton of basketball at the DC Everest area and a lot of area teams to showcase. And, you come out of there, and some of those tournament games are hard because you mentioned it a couple times, the timing of them. You're all over the place, and kids get so accustomed when they get to that varsity level. It's 7 o'clock. The volleyball, the football, it's always like a 7 o'clock-ish game, and it's difficult to play some of those times because the day before went on. So to get an even split at the end of the day when you're playing good competition and you bounce back, you got obviously things you can learn in the loss, and obviously things you can definitely gain from the win. And West has showed that in their point totals with some of those individual scores. Their strongest play is going to come down low right now early in the season. That's where they're going to pound it to. That's what teams are going to try to stop. For East, a couple of nice wins, like she said, just trying to still continue to give them the green light. I want to see you do this. I want aggressive defense, and I want you taking the shots and not hesitating on it. In the game I watched where they played Little Newman, they were not hesitating. I mean, they looked at that shot, drilled it, and they pumped in a lot of balls from outside the arc, as well as they came down and were aggressive, boxing out and fighting for the rebound. For DC Everest, that's a tough. You might be against a good competition in regions, but those are sometimes tough games to bounce back from.
Right.
When you've been handed it a little bit, and for them, and especially in a tight game, are you going to get over the hump? And like you said, Rhinelander's solid in the GNC, so very good win, a nice win for Coleman Shipping and his crew.
After what happened last season, they needed that badly. They need to start winning a few of these games when you get a chance. And to do that, and again, I thought Rhinelander looked pretty good in their game against Athens on Friday.
Right.
And then they won another one just last night as well, we'll talk about. You got Merrill. We knew Merrill was going to have a tough one against Shawano. We talked about it with Coach DeBoer last week. And Maya at 14, Sophie Wendorf 10, but the Blue Jays fell to Shawano 72-45. Likewise, a bit of a tough weekend for Stevens Point as they continue to challenge themselves, but also having a few bumps in the road. They went to the Brookfield Central Thanksgiving shootout. They lost to Kettle Moraine Lutheran 76-48 on Friday, and then fell to the Milwaukee Academy of Science 74-65 on Saturday. So again, I think both Merrill and Stevens Point challenged. But, as you said, I mean, it's tough to kind of take it on the chin by double digits like those games.
Yeah. I mean, you never want to be blown out. It's not fun for anybody, from the coaches to the players to the parents. It's a difficult thing. It's what you can learn out of them, bounce back and fix for the next game. So, you want to see how you want to get onto that next game floor experience as much as you want to get in the gym and practice as fast as you can to see what you can do better. Now, for Spash, look, the next night they got a much tighter score there. Mm-hmm. But what they're probably looking at is, getting off to the start, getting our systems in. Again, first-year coach, things in there. So looking for that first W. For Merrill, I think Coach DeBoer has a very good handle on the direction he wants to take his team. And he'll find a way to build off that Shawano loss, when they pounce back in another non-conference one that they have against Florence.
And last night, Marshfield beat Baraboo 61-32. I can't fake it and say I know a lot about Baraboo, whether or not that was a quality win or not. But Marshfield, they came up just short against Stevens Point last year in the conference. It feels like a program that, again, is getting to that level that we came to know for many years. It looks like it's going to be a very tough team, I think, in the Valley. And maybe even at this point, I would say that Marshfield might be a team to beat in that conference.
Yeah, and they're going to get out and challenge themselves and play teams in the Eau Claire and the Cross area, just because that's what they are. And I think talking to our coach guests a lot, and coaches I've run into outside of the show here, is just we're kind of picking and choosing where we gotta, we're gonna take teams that we normally play and we'll play them again. We'll play our conference schedule, and then we're gonna pick some games that are good for us. So I think that maybe not the wrong mentality, because you never know if you just keep going best team, best team, best team. Can that beat your team up too, to agree where you don't survive or function well because you lose some confidence? It's another way to look at it, I guess. But for Marshfield, they're going to be in the thick of things at the top of that conference.
Great Northern Conference, and actually a very big game last night. We mentioned Mosinee had beat Wausau West Saturday. They also rolled over Crandon on Friday, 64-25, and that led to a massive early season game last night in Mosinee. And the Lakeland Thunderbirds came into Mosinee and knocked off the Indians 53-38 as expected. Christina Ouimet continues to be just on fire to start off the season. She had 26 points. Taylon Jershely 21 for Mosinee. But again, Mosinee, that was a good win against West on Saturday. But right now, Lakeland looks like that they have the difference maker in Christina Ouimet, and they also have a couple of other really good, bigger players that are going to make them, I think, a really tough matchup for anybody.
Yeah, they've had the last 2 seasons, they've made deep runs into the playoffs with one state trip last year, and I think that they're just poised to play with that confidence and keep reciprocating off those seasons, and they're built. I mean, Ouimet is going to get a lot of the focus, but when you have a player of that caliber, she's also going to be able to dump it out of the pass and find those other girls that are obviously stepping up, because you can see in the point totals they're getting. That makes you a dangerous team. And if you hit it on the defensive end, which they did, hold Mosinee, who has a scoring punch too, to 38 points and came off a nice win where they put up 62 against West in their win. It's a good game. I think they're an early odd favorite. It'll be interesting to see where these two teams pan out, and you get that late game where they're playing each other too in February.
Right. And I guess another team I want to touch on again, just to sort of underline that was a good win for Everest, was Rhinelander, who defeated Medford in their conference opener last night, 44-29. Anago got past Tomahawk 43-29, and Rib Lake in a non-conference game beat Pines 56-37. But that's a good win for Rhinelander. And again, Rhinelander always seems to hang around, right? But there's always Lakeland and Mosinee in the GNC on the girls' side, and then Rhinelander usually has a couple of girls that are able to fill it up a little bit and become kind of a dangerous team from time to time as well.
And I don't know their whole personnel, but one of the times when I was watching the highlights for Rhinelander against Everest on the news,
a girl named Auburn Clark had 30 in that game, and I think she had around 20 last night.
She might be the coach's kid, which always gives you a little bit of a gym rat mentality. And there's a Van Zyl on that team.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If that's her younger sister. The other one put up a lot of points in her career up in Rhinelander. So, again, they've already got 5 games in, sitting at 3-2, and a quality win against an Athens team that has a lot of girls back from last season and a lot of kids that can put the ball in the basket. So to beat Athens was a quality win, and come back and won at Medford is good for them. So I they'll probably be, like you said, Lakeland, Mosinee, and then Rhinelander will be hanging in 3 and 4 in that conference.
Marewood South, again, as we talked last week, Assumption right now, head and shoulders, it appears, above everybody else. They had their Cranberry Classic over the weekend, and if you were looking for close basketball games, you did not get them with the Assumption girls, as they beat Nakusa 82-6.
I was going to add, I wrote that down, and I'm like, did I not? I thought I forgot. Not trying to knock the team. I thought I forgot a number.
I know.
Which is tough.
And I shouldn't chuckle, but I mean, you see that kind of score, it's just like you feel for everybody involved in a game like that. And then Saturday, they defeated Wyowega Fremont 74-28. 5 Royals in double figures in that game, led by Anna Schooley, 17. Schooley actually led Assumption in both games. Talking about scheduling, and I was actually talking to somebody last night in Rapids when I was at the hockey game, and I said, mention those games, and it's like, I hope at some point Assumption does have some other games on their schedule that test them, because I think once you get to the playoffs, you need those kind of games. You can't just go out there and have glorified scrimmages all season long.
You're 100% right. I mean, proof, and I think Pacelli will be a very good basketball team this year, but there was proof from that last year when Newman and them played in the sectional, was it the sectional final or sectional semi?
Yeah.
It was right. You could see it was just heads and tails above, because they had played some strong, deep competitive games against good basketball teams, and I think that made a difference in the teams you pick. So, I think, as coaches, NADs, you really want to know your team and you want to see. And I think Assumption will be, they're going to be at top of that conference. They're going to have a great record. But can you hit that wall? Can you hit that wall where you're not ready to get through a situation because you haven't been challenged? Or are you just that good and you're going to run the mill anyways? Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they have a good one in their next one when they're going to play Phillips on Friday in the crossover. Yeah. And there's another one of these great early games to see where two of the projected top teams in each side of that mirror could pop out. But right now, looking at the scores, Assumption could argue, too, we're getting the job done. And we're getting a lot of our players stronger because they're getting a ton of time. So.
Edgar and Auburndale got wins early in the week. Edgar beat Spencer 53-31, Michaela Workus 20. Auburndale beat Columbus Catholic 43-27. Those probably are the two teams in the Merowith South that will be. Auburndale is always going to be a solid team, and I think Edgar always has that athletic ability. Could perhaps be a battle sort of for second place in that conference.
Right. I think if those are two programs that last year did well too, and they made a couple of runs in the playoffs there and had some good success, vying for second and third. Will they have a chance to knock off Assumption on a given night? I would guess not, but they could be two teams that could easily do that.
Let's take a break because we are incredibly already halfway through our show. I mean, this flies right on by. We're already past 7 o'clock. So we got to take a quick time out and then come back with our student athlete guest for this week from Mosinee High School. And their hockey team made it to the state tournament a year ago. Off to a good start this year. Had a thrilling overtime win last night. And we'll talk to Grant Kuklinski coming up next as we continue here on this Wednesday evening, the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230.
WXCO 1230 AM, W255DN Wausau, streaming at bullfallsradio.com.
Fall sports are here. If you're looking for your next ride, check out Mankey GMC in Schofield. Formerly Fred Miller Automotive, Mankey GMC serves Schofield, Wausau, Marshfield, and Stevens Point with a huge selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. Explore a range of top-notch SUVs like Acadia, Terrain, and Yukon, or choose from the rugged Sierra truck lineup, or even a certified pre-owned vehicle. No matter your dream vehicle awaits at Mankey GMC, 448 Grand Avenue in Schofield, and online at MankeyAuto.com. Mankey GMC in Schofield, where your journey begins.
Hungry for flavor-packed fun?
Dive into Red Robin's sizzling burgers, mouth-watering fries, and endless options.
Or maybe you're craving the perfect slice.
Then it's Donato's Pizza, your passport to pizza perfection.
Order now and treat yourself to an unforgettable taste experience.
Red Robin and Donato's Pizza, 225548 Rib Mountain Drive in Wausau.
Call 715-301-0019 or log on redrobin.com.
Red Robin and Donato's Pizza.
On Friday night, the Wausau West High School hockey team travels south to Waukesha to take on the Wings. Hear all the exciting action live on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 6:45 and the opening face-off at 7 p.m. Wausau West Hockey on Bull Falls Radio is brought to you by the Cloverbell Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurant, Sun Printing, Graphic Packaging International, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Mankey Automotive, and Shine Chiropractic. It's Wausau West at Waukesha in high school hockey. Friday, starting with the pregame show at 6:45, opening face-off at 7 p.m. on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Time now for our student athlete guest. As every week, we start off the second hour with one of our area student athletes, and very happy to welcome from the Mosinee High School hockey team, Grant Kuklinski. And Grant, first of all, always appreciate it when folks make the trek over. I come up from Mosinee to see us. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Well, let's jump right in because I always like bringing hockey guys in because Jeff's the basketball guy, and it's like we got to teach him a thing or two about hockey. But obviously, last season was a thrill, I imagine, for you and your teammates, able to make it to the state tournament. Play down at Bob Suter's Madison Ice Arena for that first tournament down there. Before we talk about this year, what was that experience like to be able to get through your bracket, make it to the state tournament, experience that energy down there with a packed house? I imagine that was hopefully not a once in a lifetime thing for you, but it had to be a very special trip.
Yeah, for a lot of us players, our goal is to at the end of the year to get to that spot. So once we got there, we were pretty hyped, even though it didn't really go our way. But yeah, it was pretty special for a lot of us.
Well, and how much does that lead into the next season? I mean, I just got to imagine that for the guys that are returning, that's such a big moment that you want to recreate, whether it left a taste that you weren't satisfied when you're there or just the fun of getting back there. How much does that motivate your team? How much does it motivate your team for this year or even in the off season when you guys were working out?
Well, yeah, we lost it last year, so I think we're all pretty motivated this year to make that run back. We started out pretty hot, so we're looking to make an appearance again.
Let's talk about the start of the season. We're very early, obviously, just 2 games into the season, but you're off to a good start. You had 3 goals and 4 assists in the first 2 games of the season, including last night, an overtime thriller. You had a 5-4 victory last night over Thomas Sparta. You were down by 2 goals twice in the game, and you were part of the game-winning goal, helper. You had a goal and 2 assists last night. Cooper's Astral got the game winner. What's a game like that early in the season do for your team? Because you do have a challenging, I think, top of the Great Northern Conference. And of course, your goals ultimately go deeper than that. But to have a challenge like that, to be down a couple of times and to be able to find a way and earn a win, I imagine early in the season, that's something that kind of brings a team together, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like facing all these non-conference teams right away because it gives us a lot of perspective on how we're going to do throughout the season. So I like just facing those harder teams right away. So, yeah, that was pretty fun.
What about this version of the Mosinee High School hockey team? Obviously, there's always change. There's always kids that graduate. There's always kids that come on board. When you look at your team, at this point, from what you've learned, maybe what are the strengths of this team? Who are some of the top leaders for this team? Maybe a little thumbnail scouting report on the strengths for this team to begin with.
Yeah, I say our strengths are definitely our forwards. Even we do have quite a bit of defense, a lot of young defensemen, but our forwards we're still young. We have a couple older guys, but we have a lot of junior forwards: Ethan Altman, Dan DeCleve, a couple of them guys, Cooper's Astro. Yeah, I'd say our forwards are definitely our strong suit.
And as far as early on too, what are some things that your coaches are working with you guys and things that you think, hey, we want to get better at this a little faster especially in some of these tough matchups?
Yeah, we're working a lot on our zone entries this year because they haven't been quite like what we wanted them to be in the past couple of years. So I feel like our zone entries will help a lot later in the season.
Again, we're talking to Grant Kuklinski from the Mosinee High School hockey team here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Let's look at yourself. You obviously have some experience. You were a double-digit goal scorer a year ago. You obviously were a big cog in a state tournament team. During the course of your hockey career, when did you first start playing varsity? What year were you?
I was a freshman.
Okay, you started as a freshman. How have you changed as a hockey player since you were a freshman up to this point? What are the areas maybe that you're most improved in, and just generally how you've changed as a hockey player?
I think that my speed has always been a big part of my game. I've improved my shot quite a bit. I've been working all summer on that, so that helps a lot of the off-season work. So, yeah.
When you talk about the shot, because I think that is maybe people just assume, okay, you're kind of a goal scorer, but there does take a lot of work because you can have opportunities, but if you don't have that shot, if you don't have that little extra, maybe for young hockey players, what have you done to improve that shot, to maybe take you from a somewhat dangerous goal scorer to a more dangerous goal scorer because of your shot? What do you do to make your shot better?
It's a lot in your wrist. You got to work out your wrist a lot is what I do. There's different releases that you have to learn. It's a lot of practice.
And whether it's different angles, a different point of hitting the puck, how do you learn all that? Does that just come through time, or did it come through experience? Do you go to camps? Do you listen to coaches? I mean, there's YouTube videos. I guess from being a real non-hockey player, how do you pick up that different movement of the puck to make it more useful in your offensive scoring?
I've learned a lot from like my coaches and my relatives. My dad is actually my coach all throughout youth, so I learned a lot from him. And obviously, you look at NHL now these days, YouTube videos, all that kind of stuff.
When did you start playing hockey? Because so often hockey players, boy, I mean, you start really, really small. How old were you the first time you put on the skates?
I think my parents got me on the ice for the first time when I was 3 years old. And my grandma was actually the first one to put me on the ice. So.
I was going to say, I thought maybe your grandma was your goaltender or something like
that. Yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, obviously when you're 3, I don't think you probably know what you like. What is it about hockey that made you keep coming back, that makes you work on your shot, makes you work on your game? Because hockey, I think a lot of people don't realize, I mean, there's a lot of travel involved. There's a lot of expense involved. I mean, it's not something that you can just sort of, I think, go halfway with. What's it about hockey that has kept you going and got you to the level that you are right now for Mosinee?
Well, you see there's all these other sports that aren't like in the same exact weather that we're in. We're considered in like a cold weather, so other guys don't really see like how much that affects us, but it doesn't really affect us at all. But I'd say that spark, as soon as you step into the ice, is what really makes it happen.
Let's turn away. We'll get back because there's actually some very exciting stuff going on in hockey in the next couple of weeks I want to kind of delve into with you, but let's step away. But are you involved in any other sports?
Yeah, I'm in football and baseball too.
Well, let me ask you about both those sports because you just were part of a very successful football season. Yep. But yet it was a disappointing end.
Yeah.
How do you look at that? Because there was so much success. I mean, it really had a wonderful win over in Medford, big win to win the conference and just do an outstanding job throughout the season. And then to be that close to a big playoff win and have it slip away. I imagine that it was probably tough to sleep after that. So it's sort of a mixture, the thrill of victory so often and then the agony of defeat. How did you take the whole football season as a whole?
Well, I think we did very well throughout the whole season. We started out not that good. We lost to Stratford there, but
a lot of people did that.
Yeah, I agree. As the season went on, though, we worked a lot in practice, and then that final game, everything that went wrong everything that could have went wrong went wrong.
What position do you play in football?
I'm the kicker. So.
And what position do you play in baseball?
I'm second base.
Okay.
Do you have and your coaches can't get mad at you for anything you answer on this. Do you have what's the order of your sports? Because everybody kind of has one they like more than the other.
I'd say hockey's on top, and then baseball after that, and then football.
Do you find it, because when I'm talking to the young kids I coach, I'm always pumping them that playing multiple sports is a good thing, and there's so many reasons and benefits to doing that. Do you find that one helps you from the other to be part of that versus just saying, I'm just strictly going to be a hockey guy?
Yeah, actually, a lot. It just keeps me in shape is what the most part of it.
Do you ever find it as a demanding schedule? Because I sometimes think people that don't get to see how high school athletes work a little bit or don't live with one in their house because it's their son or daughter, maybe don't understand that, you're putting in a lot of time and effort to balance everything. Is it ever really demanding, you think, or is it just because you enjoy it so much it kind of comes off as easy?
I enjoy it, but it gets stressful at sometimes, but otherwise I enjoy most of it.
And obviously you are very busy, but when you do have a chance to maybe get away from it, get away from sports or get away from school or whatever it may be, what do you like to do? Anything that kind of helps you, settle when things do get real hectic?
Hunting and fishing, that's a good hobby. It keeps me away from everything, kind of.
Were you a deer hunter just recently?
Yeah, deer hunting and duck hunting.
Did you get
anything you want to brag about?
We saw two the first morning, but we didn't see anything after that.
Do you have, once you're done at Mosinee, do you have plans? Some people want to go to the next level. Some want to just play. Some people just want to totally focus on their education. Some people go into the job field. What's your plans after?
My plan's to go to lacrosse. I'll study sports medicine and play club hockey there at lacrosse.
Very cool. What's your favorite class?
I'm going to say science. It's pretty interesting.
Well, I was going to ask, did you, in that last sentence, did you say what you plan to study? What was it?
Yeah, sports medicine.
Sports medicine. Got it. Sorry, I didn't hear.
Let's go back to the hockey because obviously we're getting right into it. And the thing about hockey season I've noticed is we kind of get right into it. Some big things before Christmas. And next week is the Marathon Cup. And this year it's a little different because the first round is going to be played over at Marathon Park, and the championship round and the consolation round be played in your home rink at Mosinee. Is there excitement knowing that the championship round is going to be played at Mosinee this year?
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. The past couple of years past how many years has been at Everest, so it's pretty exciting to get a fresh start at Mosinee and see how that'll go.
How big is the Marathon Cup tournament to Mosinee hockey players?
It means a lot to us because West has won it how many past years, so we really want to get that win in this year.
And what about this tournament? Obviously, you guys start with East Merrill United, and then, of course, West and Everest playing in the second round. How do you look at this? I mean, is it something that you're already looking forward to? Obviously, you have conference games coming up against Lakeland tomorrow, and then Antigo coming up next week. Is it something that you kind of keep at arm's length? Because I know that it's one of those kind of like signposts of a season. It kind of sets you want to win your conference, you probably want to win a sectional, you want to win a state championship, but that for the teams involved in this tournament, you want to win a Marathon Cup. Is it something that you're already looking forward to?
Yeah, that's kind of my favorite part of the season is this Marathon Cup. It brings a lot of excitement to the team, and ever since the my first year that we lost it, it's always been there.
And there's been some pretty tough games because I broadcast West hockey, so I'm always there every year. And I know that, there's been some nip and tuck affairs with Mosinee. Does it feel like you guys are kind of knocking on the door now to get that cup?
Yeah, we're definitely knocking on the door. I think we have a good shot this year, too.
And jumping into your conference, you talk Lakeland's your next game coming up. And so jumping into your conference a little bit, who are some teams that, maybe they're the teams you always look forward to playing because there's a little rivalry there, and then maybe some of the, I guess, set up your conference a little bit. Obviously, you guys want to be favorites and you want to win that, but what else is there in that conference that'll be a little challenging in some of those games?
I would say Tomahawk will be a challenge this year. They have a lot of young guys, a couple older guys that'll be a challenge, and actually our first two games against them are back-to-back weeks, so that'll be fun.
And tomorrow night's Lakeland, and it's been a pretty good rivalry with Lakeland. Some big games, because there's like an oddity with the Great Northern in a sense that you have a conference tournament, and now since WIAA has gone to the two-division format, most of the Great Northern Conference teams are in the same sectional. So it's almost as though you have back-to-back tournaments within your conference. There's been some pretty big games with Lakeland over the last few years, hasn't there?
Yeah, Lakeland, they lost a lot of good players last year, especially their star goalie. And I think this year they'll be a tough matchup. I feel like they always end up having a good goalie every single year.
Who is your favorite opponent? Who's the team that maybe when you look at your schedule, when you get ready for the hockey season, that you do circle and say, oh, these are the games I'm really looking forward to?
I look forward to Rhinelander a lot because I have a couple good buddies on that team. And I'm going to say Tomahawk because they're always – they didn't used to be so hot, but this year they'll be a tough matchup.
Is there a place that you don't like to play, like an arena that's just no fun? Maybe the fans and student section are annoying, or it's suffocating. Or can you have different? This is a naive hockey question. Can you have different size ice?
Yeah.
Can you play on?
Yeah, because Everest is actually Olympic size ice, and ours is not quite that.
So
big.
what's your preference? Do you like a bigger ice arena? I mean, do you just like
basically Green Heck or Northern Pines?
I like the bigger ice, this bigger sheet of ice, because you can use a lot more. It's a lot more space that you can use.
Gotcha.
We always wrap things up by asking our student athletes that have gone through the process for a few years, and like yourself, and especially multi-sport athletes, as you get closer to the end of your high school career, when you if you're around maybe a freshman that comes into your hockey program or a sophomore that's just joining up, a piece of advice, maybe something you've learned over the years. What piece of advice could you pass along to a younger teammate to help make their journey through the program a little bit better?
I would say just take it all in. It comes quick. The end comes fast. When I was a freshman, they all kind of said that to me, and I didn't really think much of it until now. Freshman year kind of seems like it was yesterday. So,
and I guess finally, how much does it mean to get back to state after you did it once already? Because I imagine as a senior that when you put your head on the pillow, I imagine there's some thoughts about trying to get back to the state tournament and trying to lift that trophy, isn't there?
Yeah, not just to our team getting back there, to our whole program. It kind of means a lot because the younger kids all look up to us, and hopefully that they can do that one day as well.
And what do you think it'll take? I mean, I think you have to kind of have a game plan. You got to know that this is some of the stuff we want to accomplish. What's some of the pathway to get there?
Well, we all have to buy in at practice, outside of practice, do the right things in school, out of school, those kind of things.
Fantastic. Well, Grant, again, really appreciate you coming on by. Congrats on the success. It's always good when our student athlete guest comes in after a nice win the night before, because we always set it up beforehand, and it's better.
You guys are in a much better mood.
Yeah, it was very exciting.
But very good. But best of luck through the conference. Looking forward to seeing your team at the Marathon Cup next week. And again, thank you for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Grant Kuklinski, again from the Mosinee Indians, joining us as our student athlete here this evening. We're going to come back, and I'm going to delve into some hockey because I know Jeff loves it so much coming up next.
Try my best
there
to
you
survive.
Go. It is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230.
Take your career to the next level with Graphic Packaging International. Work with a team to make Hot Pocket sleeves and the food trays you find at our local fair. Join the GPI team and experience the benefits of one of the highest paying manufacturers in the area, starting at almost $22.55 per hour. Enjoy job security, a clean facility, and an excellent benefits package, including a week of vacation after 4 months and 2 weeks after a year. Apply today at graphicpkg.com and elevate your career with Graphic Packaging.
Fall sports are here. Align your young athletes and yourself with health by scheduling an appointment with Dr. Sarah at Shine Chiropractic in Rim Mountain. Stay in the game with our comprehensive 3-point neurological exam, safe for the entire family. Don't let the daily grind keep you and your student athletes on the sidelines this year. Call Dr. Sarah at 715-298-5104. That's 715-298-5104 in Rim Mountain today.
What's your idea of fall fun? Maybe it's hitting the trails on a new ATV. Then it's time to call CCU. That's Clover Belt Credit Union. Or if you're thinking of a UTV for hauling wood or hunting, or maybe just because it would make the tasks around your property so much easier, it's time to call CCU. ATVs, UTVs, utility tractors, and their attachments for care of your property. Whether you need it for fun or to get the job done, Clover Belt Credit Union is here to help with the great rate financing you want. What are you waiting for? Life's too short and winter's too long. Thinking about a motorhome or maybe a snowplow for your ATV or utility tractor? Call CCU for great rate financing. And if you're thinking motorcycle, Clover Belt Credit Union has the financing you need for the bike you want. Call or apply online at ccuwausau.com. Check it out. For vehicle loans, for mortgages, for financing fall fun, call Clover Belt Credit Union. That's CCU. Local lenders lending local money, keeping our community strong.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. And on the Civic Media app. Nice that we had both our guests in. It's always much better when we have both our guests that are in studio, because it's just, easier to have a conversation, and appreciate both our coach and our student athlete coming in. And really, it's nice to talk, number one, when we talked about East girls basketball, because I don't think people talk about it that much. They've had, again, a lot of struggles in the last couple of decades, and it's nice to see them going in the right direction and looking like there's a little bit of stability. And great to have Grant Kuklinski come in as well, because, again, that Mosinee program made it state last year. I think they're going to be very much in the mix to get back to state, and I think that Marathon Cup tournament is going to be very interesting next week. But, again, both, I thought, gave us some good stuff, and it was really great to talk to them.
Right, and I think the best part is the picture that they can paint to the listeners of those programs, and you get to showcase and give some confidence to what you're doing, both with your teams and the success that they're having early on. So I think that's part of it. I like hanging out with you, Chad, but the best part of the show is getting to talk to those individuals and what they share about what's going on with their teams.
I agree 100% that when I'm not talking, it's the best part of the show.
Yeah.
But Besides our interviews, both with our student athlete and with our coach, I think the best part of the show is when we get Jeff Gress to break down some of the hockey action. So let's do that because it's time. I'm sure you were tuned into me last night, weren't you?
I heard parts of it. I still can't figure out what's going on. I got two choices here. I will be here so you have another body to converse with, but I could almost be better off setting an alarm and hit me in the head when it's time to get up. For my knowledge. Go for it.
But let's talk about it because the hockey season has really got underway last weekend. For a few teams, Everest had played already, but Wausau West opened up at the Eau Claire Memorial Tournament, the Memorial Meltdown each and every Thanksgiving weekend, and it always features 4 of the best teams in the state. You got Wausau West, Eau Claire Memorial, Superior, and the defending state champion this year, Notre Dame Academy. And Wausau West played 2 games, and they lost twice. And on Friday, they fell to the host, Eau Claire Memorial, 4-2. Xander DeBio and Chase Crass had goals. And then on Saturday, the Warriors actually played much better, but the score did not show it as Superior beat West 6-2. And it was a day where the Warriors gave up 3 shorthanded goals. It was just one of those days Superior took advantage of every opportunity, despite the fact that Wausau West had many more shots on net. But then last night opened up play in the Wisconsin Valley Conference, and Wisconsin Rapids peppered freshman goaltender Julian Scalcucci. I'm going to get that name right. I tell you, it's one of those new names for me. But Julian Scalcucci was just fantastic. He a freshman, 42 saves on 43 shots, and helped the Warriors defeat Wisconsin Rapids 3-1. So, again, the Warriors, they learned a lot. Again, we talk a lot about scheduling. I think because you've had the experience of knowing how the early season scheduling kind of sets things up for a team in terms of not getting too high if you win a non-conference game or getting too low if you lose. It's about trying to get better as the season goes on. And I thought the games in Eau Claire helped Wausau West, and that was a nice win on the road last night.
Yeah, I think scheduling's a big deal. I mean, I hear on the show and talking with coaches the different philosophies, but there's. If your team needs some confidence and you don't get into those heavy hitters based on you knowing your team and knowing how they're going to do. And if they're not maybe a dominant team or a real strong team for you, you might have to schedule that way. But when your team's ready to go and you're prepared, you need to make sure they're ready for any single moment. And I think one of the beauties, West has done that for years. From what I've heard you talk about and when I've seen BJ and heard him talk, it's all about that challenge, getting our kids to rise to occasion so we're ready for anything, because the determination is to make a long run, and it's nonstop. And I think that goes a long way when it could go hand in hand to build your team's progress that way, and you know what they're all about. So strength of schedule is a big deal.
DC Everest last night earned their second win of the season. The Evergreens shut out the Northwest Icemen. If you can beat the Northwest Icemen, you must be good. Everest beat the Icemen 10-0. Thomas Passano and Adam McCaig had hat tricks. Griffin Bonnell, really good young goaltender. He played a lot as a freshman, now a sophomore. He had 19 saves, recorded the shutout. I think when you look at the Wisconsin Valley Conference in hockey, I think Stevens Point, who has not played yet, they open up tomorrow night, taking on Marshfield, both in their season opener and their conference opener. I think Wausau West is always going to be there. They just, they know what they're doing. They got talent. They challenge themselves. Maybe sometimes the record is in the non-conference isn't as good, but they always find a way in the conference. But I think this DC Everest team, along with Wisconsin Rapids, I think Rapids has a very solid team. But I like Everest. They were a very young team a year ago. They're still a very young team. But you got, I think, a kid like Thomas Passano and Adam McCaig. Both have shown the ability to put up some numbers. That was their big problem a year ago. They were not able to get anything going offensively. But if they're able to get something going offensively, they got a good goaltender. We'll have to wait and see whether or not their defense pairings are up to the task. But I was impressed to see Everest get that win. They still have some work to do. I think we're going to find out more about Everest next Thursday in that first round of the Marathon Cup when they play West. But a good win, and as we said, if you beat the Northwest Icemen, you always have to celebrate.
Is that the Northwest? Is it a city? It's
the Barron High School Co-op. It's Barron is the lead, but they have a number of other schools as part of the co-op. So it's like
I figured they were up. I figured it was a co-op.
It's like the Central Wisconsin Storm in a sense.
That's what I was just. That was my first intriguing thing that I was thinking of. But I think you're right. It's nice to see that battle within and up in the top of that conference. You know, you're going to have teams that are just a little bit lower that are going to be vying for that spot, get up for that game, and the team that's a little bit raised above in terms of abilities, that's going to have to keep them at bay. But you know, they're high school kids. Things go different for different reasons. So you got to be ready on any given night to hold the spot that you want to keep.
A bit of a rough go of it for the Blue Jacks of East Merrill United. They played in a tournament down in the southern part of the state over the weekend. They had a tight one on Friday. They fell to Homestead by a score of 2-1. Zach Poggle had a goal. Connor Burton was outstanding in net with 40 saves on 42 shots. Saturday, they fell to Cedarburg 7-2. Brody Tranto and Riker Remington had goals for EMU. And then last night, it kind of fell in the last two periods. 14-2 loss to, as we heard, a very talented Tomahawk team. But for the Blue Jacks, again, 14 goals given up. Those are the ones, again, that are tough to bounce back from. It's and they got Stevens Point coming up in the conference next week. So, again, for EMU, it's going to be licking the wounds and then a really tough conference opener next week.
Well, and you don't want to knock it down to one position, because I don't know anything about their program, but I got to imagine it might not be the easiest transition when you've had, wasn't Jake Fuhrer in goal forever and putting up numbers on the saves, on the shots that were taken on him. I mean, that's a kind of a transition point for that program a little bit, with having somebody that's steady in goal. And, you know, could that determine that the people just need a little bit more time to knock that number down? But 14, you know, 14 goals is a lot of goals.
Yes, it is. And Great Northern Conference, as we talked about with Grant Kuklinski, Mosinee last night rallied past Thomas Sparta 5-4 in overtime. Cooper Zastro had 2 goals, including the game winner in the OT. Grant Kuklinski had a goal and 2 assists. So Mosinee, again, looking very solid. Tomahawk was involved in a tournament. They beat St. Paul Johnson 9-0, but lost to Amory 5-2. Amory is a very, very good hockey team and a hockey program in Division II. So for Mosinee, again, they go up north to Lakeland tomorrow night. Lakeland has been one of those teams near the top of the conference for the last few years, but as we heard, they did lose quite a bit due to graduation. And looking ahead at the Valley teams, the first conference game was that West Rapids game. That's the only conference game that's been played so far. Tomorrow night, Stevens Point is at Marshfield. First time that we'll see Stevens Point. They haven't played a game at all yet, and they're expected to be a very, very good team this year. I think the favorite in the WVC. A lot of production back for Stevens Point. Then over the weekend, join me on Friday night and Saturday afternoon as the Wausau West Warriors make a trek down to the southeast part of the state, the Milwaukee area. Wausau West at Waukesha Friday night, 6:45 airtime, right here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. And then on Saturday afternoon, I think is a 2 o'clock, a 2 o'clock face-off, I believe, against University School of Milwaukee, again, live right here on Bull Falls Radio. DC Everest also heads to that part of the state. They take on Milwaukee Marquette Friday and Waukesha on Saturday. And also for folks in central Wisconsin, if you're in the area Saturday night, Stevens Point hosting Notre Dame Academy. Notre Dame, last season, the state champs. They were second in that Eau Claire tournament. They lost to Eau Claire Memorial in the championship round. So that's a great hockey matchup coming up Saturday night at the KB Willett Ice Arena. And then Tuesday of next week, a full night of Wisconsin Valley Conference hockey. DC Everest opens up playing the conference at Wisconsin Rapids. Wausau West to host Marshfield. Scene of the crime, as Marshfield last season knocked off West at Marathon Park in the playoffs. So I'm guessing Wausau West will be ready for that one next Tuesday night. And East Merrill United at Stevens Point. So, again, that's our hockey report.
Well, and starting off with some good games and things to listen.
And we'll preview the Marathon Cup next week. Yeah. And I expect you to be prepared for our big Marathon Cup discussion next week.
I figure you'll give me a pass if I can name the 4 teams. There are only 4 teams, right?
Yes.
Okay,
4 teams.
so I'm starting off at...
Well, who are they?
You're putting me on the spot.
I'm going to put you on the spot. It's the Marathon Cup because Marathon County.
Right. I know that much. It's West Mosinee.
Yes.
It's Wausau East, or the War Jacks, right?
Blue Jacks.
Blue Jacks, sorry.
East Merrill United.
Yep.
And who's the 4th team?
I'll get it here.
Oh, come on. This is so
it's
easy.
Everest.
Of course it's Everest.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Well, that's a start.
I was starting to get worried there. Oh, I also have to mention the Central Wisconsin Storm opened up their season over the weekend. They were hosting the Gobbler Cup in Mosinee. And the Storm got off to a very good start. On Friday, they defeated the Eau Claire area Stars 4-0. 4 different goal scorers for the Storm. Claire Kalmus had 10 saves, a 50-10 edge in shots for the Storm. So actually the game was not as close as the score would indicate. And then Saturday was an interesting game because last season the Storm lost to Hayward in a sectional semifinal. Very disappointing. A couple of weeks ago when you were not here because you bailed on me.
Yeah.
Tristan Wickland of the Storm was our student athlete guest, and I was asking her about her favorite team to play, and she was looking forward to getting a crack at Hayward, and the Storm defeat Hayward by a score of 4-1 to win the Gobbler Cup championship. It was a 4-goal second period for the Storm. Claire Kalmus had 18 saves. Jaden Yurkovsky had 2 goals for the Storm. Tomorrow, we will have the Storm in action, and it's an early start time for folks, so be aware. 5 o'clock face-off at Medford, so we'll get a chance to see the Central Wisconsin Storm for the first time again at Medford tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Then Saturday, they take on the Metro Lynx at Greenheck Fieldhouse. So for folks in the area, they can go over and see the Central Wisconsin Storm in action. So there we go.
That's the complete hockey report.
That is the complete hockey report. I almost forgot that because I was so concerned about testing you about the Marathon Cup. But we're going to come back and look ahead at the big matchups in boys and girls basketball coming up next as we continue here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the WIAA, are the 178,000 high school sports students in Wisconsin. And so we stand. We stand for the runners, soccer and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, administrators, and officials. We stand for the swimmers, football players, and wrestlers. We stand for the golfers, softball, and volleyball players. We stand as the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and all who participate in them and make them possible. Because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
On Thursday night, the Central Wisconsin Storm girls hockey team looked for a 3rd straight win to start off the season, traveling to Medford to take on the Raiders. Hear all the exciting action on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, with the opening face-off set for 5 p.m. Central Wisconsin Storm hockey on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230 is brought to you by the Cloverbelt Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurants, Sun Printing, Graphic Packaging International, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Menke Automotive, and Shine Chiropractic. It's Central Wisconsin Storm hockey at Medford, Thursday, starting at 5 p.m. on your home for high school sports. Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app with Jeff Gress. I'm Chad Holmes. Well, let's look ahead basketball-wise for the next week as we really get into full swing in both the boys and the girls sides. Let's start with the boys. Let's start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference in terms of what's on the schedule over the next week. Again, the WVC not into conference play yet. It's going to be at least another week until we see some conference games in the Valley, but some interesting non-conference games. So tomorrow night, you got Chippewa Falls at Stevens Point. You have Eau Claire North at Wisconsin Rapids. Eau Claire North is actually going through a bit of a Wisconsin Valley Conference schedule because they played at DC Everest last weekend. They go to Wisconsin Rapids on Thursday, and then Wausau West goes to Eau Claire North on Saturday night. But you have DC Everest back in action again. A lot of, I think, again, good non-conference games. Friday, Eau Claire Memorial is at DC Everest. You have Mosinee at Merrill. That's going to be, I think, a good matchup. Merrill coming off that nice win at Toronto last week, and Mosinee off to a good start. You have Marshfield hosting Holman on Friday. As I said, Wausau West at Eau Claire North on Saturday. Green Bay East is at Wausau East on Saturday. Wisconsin Rapids travels to Sparta on Monday, and then a whole bunch of action on Tuesday. Wausau West at Monona Grove. Interesting non-conference game. I'm going to make the trek down to Monona Grove on a Tuesday. Get to bed very late before work on Wednesday, but and then a long Wednesday, as we always have here, because I'm here until late in the evening. But Wausau West at Monona Grove on Tuesday night, live right here on Bull Falls Radio. Wausau East at Rhinelander. That's always an interesting matchup. You have Northern Pines at Merrill in the is it the Peeper Bowl?
Yes, yes, it would be.
Because the former coach of the Eagles is now the coach of the Merrill Blue Jays. And then Stevens Point, maybe we can carpool. Wausau West and Stevens Point, carpool down to the Madison area. Spash is at the Forest. So, again, a lot of non-conference. There's all non-conference, but actually we're going to learn a lot about these Valley boys basketball teams in the next week, aren't we?
Well, yeah, and you know what you kind of have playing out the way, getting an opinion in the predictions. Spash is sitting at 2-0. Marshfield's 1-0. East is 3-0, expected to finish at the top. West is at 2-1, expected to be in the middle of the pack, and then everybody else has, one win and a couple losses.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Sorry. Getting far away. Getting excited. I think the right mindset is, especially with the way their conference is set up, and they've done this for years. They go out and challenge themselves against some teams that they're going to have to vie against for playoff seeding, maybe, implications of where they're going to finish at the end of the year. Also, maybe just to get a common opponent to see where they stack up against their other conference foes. I think you got some good back. Spash jumps out and right out, looking just at the next games for Friday, Thursday type of deal, go and play Chippewa Falls. And Chippewa Falls is always kind of in there. Sometimes they can take the Valley. Sometimes the Valley's there. It's always kind of seems a toss up. Holman playing Marshfield, another good game to get at is Holman Division 2?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so another good one just to get in the Division 2. For East, I would expect that they're going to be 4-0 at the end.
Yeah.
They've beaten Green Bay East over the years. So I think that they can notch another win and start off with a 4-0. For Everest, playing a good Eau Claire Memorial team, still trying to establish that identity with the guys that they got coming back in their core group. For West, to bounce back after Avalon North, putting in the new systems, continuing that grittiness that they always have, but you got a couple games you want to get in there as
two
good
long trips.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have early in the season? Do you like these long road trips to sort of gel teams a little bit?
Usually, sometimes it depends on how you do. If you go and play well in the first one, and you're it's a happy bus ride back, and your team is building off that confidence. The second one down there's always gravy because you're going again right away. Sometimes the second one, if you've taken a tough loss or not played that well without a lot of practice time and just a shoot around, can be a long bus ride, especially come back 0-2 off those trips. So I guess there's highs and lows on both angles there. Merrill Mosinee, that'll be interesting to see where Merrill stacks up because we know what Mosinee has. But they're coming off that nice win, hitting the jumper against Shawano.
And so often that's a playoff preview.
Yeah, those are other big deals here just to see where you stack up for the postseason.
And obviously has seeding implications even this early.
Yeah, so I'm excited for some of those early matchups and jumping into the next games. East Rhinelander's a battle between the two different conferences, as is Merrill Mosinee.
That's also a bracket kind of thing, isn't it? Are they still in the same?
I got to look.
I know, because I know Rhinelander has been going down in some areas, but often it was.
and I like to see, like you said, where some of these teams are. You get to see them play like they both two Valley teams have played Eau Claire North. You get to see where they stack against a non-conference opponent. So
Great Northern Conference. Unlike the Valley, they actually get into the conference. All the teams except Mosinee on Friday night play conference games. As we said, Mosinee at Merrill, but you got Lakeland at Medford, you got Tomahawk at Northern Pines, Antigo at Rhinelander, and again. Medford has been such a good program in recent years. It would be surprising if they're not, again, contending. And then you have the other schools where you're trying to figure things out. Obviously, for Northern Pines, they had been one of the teams right near the top for the last number of years, and obviously right now they're trying to find some scoring. Their offense has been very
stagnant.
Stagnant is a good way to put it. Scoring in the 30s and the 20s so far. Antigo is always interesting because, again, boy, you look at athletics at Antigo for so many years, and football. I mean, they had some tough basketball teams and hockey teams, and I'm always curious to see if they're able to find their way back. Athletically, generally, they had a better football season. They got into the playoffs, and I'm curious to see if they're able to build a little bit. And with Rhinelander, and again, we always talk about stability. And Derek Lemons has been there for such a long time, a Rhinelander guy, and he's had, I think, a really good run. And even before him, he had Fortier there for a long time. You had, I think,
Jack Bennett was there for a while.
I mean, Rhinelander has been such a stable environment in an era where we haven't had a lot of stability in the past. And again, you have some interesting non-conference games coming up. Medford has Saturday. They're right back at it. They seem like they play Chippewa Falls and everything, and they play Chippewa Falls Saturday. Then they play Onalaska on Monday. And then, again, we have some interesting non-conference games on Tuesday. Pines and Merrill, as we said, East and Rhinelander, Prentice and Tomahawk, Chequamegon and Lakeland. But you get into the conference on Friday. It's fun to see some of these conference games early on.
Well, and I'm interested to see what Medford does. Unless my notes are wrong, they haven't played yet, right?
No.
So that's a long time to be beaten up. And then maybe get a scrimmage and you
3
beat on
games
each other.
in 4 days, right?
Yeah, and then they jump right into it with the Lakeland Chippewa Falls back-to-back. So I'm just kind of interested to see how they funnel through that and where they stand starting the season off. Rhinelander, like you said, is steady and consistent with Coach Lemons. Around the whole 3 starters returning. But, again, they were off for a while. They played on the earliest date, November 21st, where they beat Crandon by about I can't remember. It might have been 14,
but it feels
15
like
points.
It does feel like Rhinelander could kind of work their way back into the mix. So sort of replace Pines as that third team.
I would imagine, they could. And depending on how Medford is this year, they could, fight up to number 2, depending on how their seasons go. But with obviously Pines is down a little bit. They're going to have to find some scoring consistency, and those players will get a chance to step up. Antigo's always an interesting one because we've just kind of
been struggling
for them to creep up. And I watched, and I don't know what to expect because I know they beat Elko over in the East tournament. They had 3 Lakes down, and 3 Lakes came back and beat them. And then they lost to Wittenberg by 4. So
which is closer than they've been recently.
In which you would think so. It'll be interesting to see how some things play out with Mosinee being that early favorite. And I think these next couple of games for Medford are important to kind of establish themselves that they're going to be right in the hunt after they've lost a lot to graduation.
Hey, it's time for those always fun Merriwood Conference crossovers right away here on Friday and Thursday. You got Athens at Newman tomorrow night, Rib Lake at Edgar. Marathon hosting Chequamegon, Prentice at Stratford, Phillips at Assumption, Abbotsford at Auburndale. We always talk about it. If you're in the South, you don't want to stub your toe against the North, do you?
Nope, not that it counts as a conference game. Marathon's going to beat Chequamegon. They've been just trying to work their ranks up at for a couple of years here. I think Auburndale will beat Abbotsford. Abbotsford's very athletic, a lot of athletes off the football team. I don't know how many always go out for basketball, and I think they have another new coach this year. So just things looking to turn the corner. But Auburndale's established with the consistency of Coach Weinfurter, and I think that they would take that game. Stratford has Prentice. I'm not quite sure where Prentice stands, but Stratford always consistent on the defensive end.
Nice win against Neilsville says they must be.
Stratford?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I'm just saying, I would think they would take Prentice, too, on that.
Yeah, so I think they're in good shape.
Although, right now, Prentice, I'm not sure who they beat in the first game. They beat, last night, they beat Flambeau 70-58. So coming off, they're undefeated right now with a 2-0 record. And then, what do we say? Edgar is another one. They're going to host Rib Lake. And that's going to be their first game because they haven't played, obviously, with the state championship game, I'm assuming, because they postponed their Owen Withy game, which was supposed to be on November 27th, with 4 starter backs and that success where those kids cross over from football to basketball. I think they're going to give Rib Lake a game. We're going to see how that is. The nice thing is it's not at Rib Lake. It's at Edgar, which it's much better to play against Rib Lake in your own gym.
And what about Athens and Newman?
Athens and Newman. I think it's kind of a tale of a similar situation where both teams had a lot of players that they lost to graduation. Athens had huge production the last 2 years out of some of those guys that when they were juniors and seniors played major roles that made those longer postseason runs. And for Newman, obviously, to see what their youth and inexperience can continue to build upon after the Crandon win. So I think for Newman, it's going to be nice to be at home, but I think it's a nice challenge for both because you're going to want to be coming out with those W's for different reasons to build the success of your program.
Some interesting games on Monday. You got Marathon against Neillsville. That's always a good matchup. I will have that one live Monday night right here on Bull Falls Radio. And Columbus Catholic and Auburndale, they always seem to play each other, and that's always an interesting game as well.
Yeah, especially since if you knew the background in that both coaches are good friends. So I think they just give each other a game film and go at each other. But by now they know their teams and strategies and how they play so well. So that's always a fun game, I think, to challenge themselves because those have been some pretty good games last year. I would expect, even though Neillsville playing well with Marathon's game and the depth and the lineup that they have, and just Warren himself, Marathon I think is going to fare really well in that game.
And then Tuesday, you got the old Gress favorites, CWCC game with Newman at Regis.
That's old school.
That is old school. Midweek trip to Eau Claire for Newman Catholic, and Stratford is at Athens, which could be. It's always interesting to go into Athens for a team like Stratford.
Right. I mean, I think they battled. I can't remember what the score was last year, but I think they battled pretty tight last year in that game.
Yeah.
And then for Newman, it's nice to see
Athens may have won in Stratford, if I recall. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. It was such a long time ago.
It seems familiar, though.
Yeah.
But for Newman, it's nice to get back into those old school roots of a conference loss to time. But still, it's still a big deal to people that were in those conferences. So it's nice to see that. Much better. I'd rather have a weekend trip on that, but. We'll take it on the weekend. And
Northern Lutheran hoping to get on the winning track tomorrow. They travel to Spencer, and then they're at Marion coming up next Monday. Whitburn on Tuesday, their next game at Iola Scandinavia.
Well, and for Northern Lutheran, that'll be a good test to see where that Spencer team's at, too, against them. And to pop around right away, they get a shot right at Marion, who's predicted to win that conference.
On the girls' side, Wisconsin Valley Conference. Tuesday, we actually get into conference play, but before that, got tomorrow night, DC Everest at Mosinee. Again, the Evergreens got the win on Saturday against Rhinelander. Another Great Northern foe coming up tomorrow, but a much more difficult Great Northern foe. Merrill tries to get back on the winning track at home against Florence. Other non-conference games, Friday, Marshfield at La Crosse Central. That's a good test for the Marshfield Tigers. Got Holman at Stevens Point, New London at Wisconsin Rapids. As we talked about earlier, Wausau East home against Green Bay East on Saturday. And then the conference gets underway next Tuesday. You got DC Everest at Wisconsin Rapids. You have Merrill at Marshfield. Again, we talked to Coach DeBoer last week. That's a tough way to start off the conference. Right. And also tough for East, but they are home against Stevens Point Tuesday. While West does not have a conference game Tuesday. They host Chippewa Falls in a non-conference game. But it's fun to see some conference games we'll be able to talk about when we get together next week.
Well, and seeing some with the non-conference games.
Well, you may not talk about it next week.
Yeah, my schedule.
We are gonna mention that.
My schedule will be a little more tougher. But getting just going back off the non-conference games, challenging yourself again, playing similar divisions, but getting to a different part of the state. Marshfield playing La Crosse Central this week, and before they hop into their conference schedule. Spash has Holman. West was surprisingly, they sometimes, last year I remember they had some breaks in their schedules, whether that works for them or not, but they're off till December 5th, and they don't start they must have the conference bye.
Yes, they do.
And playing Chippewa Falls. Again, though, a quality
That's what happens when you have odd number of teams in conferences. Yep. I think I thought you knew that.
I do know that. I'm just stating that they have the bye. I know that it's a numbers thing. I think for the DC Everest Mosinee one intrigues me because Mosinee's popping off the loss from Lakeland, so they're going to be hungry to just do that. And Everest coming off a quality close win against Rhinelander, so I think both of those teams have a little something they want to gain in a victory when they play each other.
Absolutely. Mosinee has that game against Everest because they get the bye in the Great Northern because there's some Great Northern games going on. Medford,
because of odd teams again, right?
That's exactly right. Medford is at Lakeland, Pines at Tomahawk, Antigo at Rhinelander on Friday night. Lakeland at Ashland on Monday. It's going to be very interesting watching Lakeland this season because, again, it just feels like, and again, when you have multiple bigs, that's a tough matchup for small schools. I remember back in the day when Newman would have 3 6-footers. It's just tough to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, if those guys are skillful and they can move, like it's not like you got Wamet's not just standing on the block.
I mean, she's got teammates too. It's
Yeah,
like,
she can.
she's not actually a block player.
That's what I'm saying. You've got players that are agile, mobility at that height. It makes a big difference to guard that because they're just going over the top on stuff.
She can be outside and nobody's blocking her shot.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see if Rhinelander can continue to creep at the top of that conference. Along with, I mean, right now I know because the records are skewed because you've only had one game. Mosinee's pitted down at the bottom, even though they're going to be up at that top by the number of W's they're going to get over the season here. But it'll be interesting to see if anybody can creep up and knock Lakeland off one time.
And also crossovers in the Merriwood. Boy, crossover fun. Friday night, Phillips at Assumption. Really interesting game. Again, I think it'll be the first big challenge Assumption has had this season. Athens at Newman as the Cards try to get on the winning track. You have Auburndale home against Abbotsford, Shawamigan at Marathon, Prentice at Stratford, Rib Lake at Edgar, and then back into the regular conference games on Tuesday in the South. Assumption at Auburndale, which is always a big one in the South. Usually Auburndale gives Assumption as big a battle as anybody. Newman at Marathon, Edgar at Stratford. In the Merriwood North, the conference games, Athens at Phillips, which would be a good one in that part of the conference. Abbotsford at Rib Lake, Prentice at Shawamigan.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there because I think you got some tough matchups right away for the South. I mean, for the Assumption, I'm happy Phillips is coming into my gym, even though Assumption stands on their own very well. The Marathon Newman, even Newman Catholic playing Athens a little bit. You'll get to Athens has some solid girls back with a scoring punch. It'll give you another test for them to continue to gel under their first year coaches program, and then for them to turn around and jump against Marathon right away, where they're both kind of sitting down at the bottom of that conference right now to kind of claw their way back into the middle if they can. Sometimes the North and South here is a little bit more active based on the teams that they have, and it'll be interesting to see how those play out. But again, always count as conference games, so there's stuff riding on it when you play those games.
Busy week for Northern Lutheran from the CWC North. They are home against Nakusa tomorrow. They travel to Gresham, league game on Friday. And then they are home against Port Edwards next Tuesday. And also a school that's an independent I want to keep an eye on as they develop is Faith Christian. They're playing a lot of these CWC North teams. I saw they lost, who did they play? Get my notes out, but they do have a game coming up against Marion. At Marion on Tuesday. But it'll be interesting to see this Faith Christian squad, both I think in boys and girls basketball. I think it's their first year of having varsity action.
Yeah, they have, and that's probably a good idea where they're starting out with one of the smaller conferences in the area. Just to, as you build a program, you got to start somewhere and gain some confidence among your players.
And again, a team that I think will be very interesting to watch. Last night they went to Marathon and won big. Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, they're undefeated early this season. They have a conference game at Shiocton Friday. Other games in the CWC East as the conference gets underway: Amherst at Wyowega Fremont, Iola Scandinavia at Manawa, Menominee Indian at Bondwell, and then Monday Whitburn at Three Lakes Phelps. But Whitburn, again, I think they're going to be a very tough team in Central Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day they could come out for. I know that conference is challenging with a couple top teams at the top, but they could come out in first place. They beat Marathon handily. And they have some girls that are putting up, they have multiple girls putting up over 20 points a game, which really makes you dangerous because you can usually have somebody on your team to get after one defensively. When it's two of them, it's very difficult. And I'm not sure, is Shiocton predicted to be one of those top teams in that conference?
I believe so, yep.
Yeah, so a good test right away on the road this Tuesday versus them.
We got about 2.5 minutes to go. It's always fun to go into the notebook of Jeff Gress about topics which are always interesting to delve into. Where would you like to go for the last couple of minutes?
We only got 2?
We got about 2.5.
Okay, I think we got to go scheduling because the one thing about the quarter versus halves I think can take more time. So I don't know your opinion from what you've seen. If you're the head coach, what's the best way to schedule?
I'm saying you have to know what your team is.
Okay.
because if you're a team that is expecting to challenge either for a conference championship or even a state championship, you don't want to be playing a bunch of patsies. I'm sorry I have to put it that way,
right.
But you want to test yourself and not be in a situation where you're going to see things either in a conference game or in a playoff game for the first time. You got to challenge yourself, and I think winning games by 60 points do you no good.
What if your conference is a real dogfight and you're getting, you're gonna duke it out from 1 to 6 teams in the conference. You're gonna duke it out from 1 to 6.
Again, that
just to toss it out there.
It adjusts. Yeah, you adjust. But how many deep conferences like that are there? I mean, come on.
And then let's bring it back, because we've seen teams with different games. We have teams that haven't played yet. We've had teams that have 5 games in. Do you play early or do you wait?
Well, it always seems like I always have this conversation with Coach Jacobson when I see him for the first time, because they always are one of the last teams to get going. And I think in a lot of ways it certainly works for Marathon the way they've done it. What about you? All these questions.
Well, I think you play early and you get out there, because I think it's exciting to build a community thing where you should play over the holidays when you can get your alumni back, whether you're playing on somebody else's gym in the area or you're playing in your own. I think it's important to play on those breaks, keep the kids active and doing something. And I agree with you. You got to know your personnel, which is the whole reason you do this. And it is number one about what type of team you have and what you think you can grind out with them. And if they need to be challenged, you got to challenge them. And if you just think you need some confidence boosters because you're building that back up, then you're going to have to find a balance of those teams, because you can learn as much as playing a really good team as you can in beating a team that you should beat.
And we've seen the last couple of weeks coaches that really do know what they're talking about when it comes to scheduling. I thought last week with Coach DeBoer and tonight with Jennifer Stout, again, they know what they're doing when it comes to trying to put together a schedule.
Yeah, they're reading their teams and deciding what's best for it, and I think that's ultimately important too. You got to know what's best for your team, because they are the kids that you care about so much.
Well, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks to Jennifer Stout from Wausau East and Mosinee Senior Grant Kuklinski for joining us. Thanks to Jeff Gress, and thanks for joining us. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio.
WXCO 1230 AM, W255DN Wausau, streaming at bullfallsradio.com.